I would say that my chrysalis really started early 30s when I moved to London. Like that to me felt like really transformational.
Your experience at MEA, talk about that. I mean, what was it like?
It requires a lot of bravery, but it's in a space where you feel completely cared for. We should be doing the things that we love. We should be amateurs, one who loves doing something, particularly as we age, right? Because it keeps tapping you into all of those things as you get older.
Welcome to the Midlife Chrysalis podcast with Chip Conley, where we explore how midlife isn't a crisis, but a chrysalis, a time of profound transformation that can lead to the most meaningful chapter of your life.
Welcome to the Midlife Chrysalis and my episode with Karen Walrond, who is somebody I got to know over the last couple of years, and I just love her. She's an MEA faculty member. She has a workshop coming up in November. And part of the reason I really enjoy my conversation with her is because she's somebody who is really open to learning something new. Her new book, which is coming out, In Defense of Dabbling, endorsed by Brené Brown, who's a close friend of Karen's, speaks to this idea that, hey, why are we not learning new things our whole life? One of my favorite questions to ask at any cocktail party is, at what in your life are you a beginner these days? So we talk about that. We talk about her other book, one of her other books, The Radiant Rebellion, about aging and just how do we keep our light as we age. I think you're going to enjoy this. She's an inspiration to me, and I think she will be for you as well. Check it out. I know your personal story. A lot of other people don't. This is a great way for us to just know who you are. So we don't read some boring bio about you. Give us your bio, but with your humorous, joyous fingerprints all over it.
All right. Well, I hope it won't be as boring as my written bio, but let's go. So I'm Karen, and I was born on a very small island in the Caribbean called Trinidad. If you think of the archipelago of the Caribbean islands, it's the very last one next to Venezuela. So I was born there of Trinidadian parents, of Trinidadian grandparents. Sort of grew up there and the United States at the same time. My dad was in the oil industry. Oil is really big in the Caribbean, and so we moved back and forth a lot. So I would say that my formative years were Trinidad. I consider myself Trini to the bone, as we say in Trinidad, but I spent a lot of my childhood in America as well. Um, And my last time we moved back and forth probably every 2 years or so. The last time we moved was my, uh, senior year in high school, although I had already graduated high school in Trinidad at 15, but I was young, and so colleges didn't want me, and it was really hard to get me into high school because I already had a diploma, but we managed to get me into a high school where instead of the languages that I had focused on in high school in Trinidad, Spanish and French, my engineer father suggested that focus more on sciences. So I did physics and chemistry and calculus and all the things for my last year of high school, and then ended up going to engineering school um, for college at Texas A&M University. And so I got a civil engineering degree purely to please my dad. Actually, to really please him, I would have gotten a petroleum engineering degree, but I didn't. I was a rebel. So I got a civil engineering degree. I graduated in '88, got married, to my first husband, which plays into chrysalises later on, but, I got married to my first husband, realized within a year I did not wanna be an engineer. So I thought, "Well, maybe I'll go back to school." Definitely not a graduate degree in engineering because this is not it. So either law or MBA. And every engineer I knew was getting an MBA, and LA Law was on the air at the time, and they were all these lovely, sexy, hot lawyers, and I thought that's what I want to be. That is not, by the way, a good reason to go to law school, but that is where I went to law school. That's why I went to law school. So I ended up going to law school at the University of Houston part-time. I was working full-time and then going to school until my last year of law school, and then I went full-time. Got the law degree, got divorced. My divorce was my first case. And then,
Oh, wait. You're You were the divorce attorney for your divorce.
And that's exactly right. It's
Oh
cheaper
my
that way,
gosh.
right? Yes, it's cheaper that way. And it was a very amicable, thank goodness, amicable divorce, and we had no kids, and so it was a very, very easy divorce. So I was a single finally, I was probably, what, 27 by that point, and I was single and really kind of living on my own for the first time because I got married right out of college and just loving it. Was having a really, really great time. Had the opportunity to move to England for my work when I was about 31 or so, and so moved to London and met my second husband while I was there, and so we got married. We met he asked me to marry him 18 days after my first date, and I said, "Yes."
Wow.
That's bananas, that's also something else you shouldn't do, but I did. We got married and, you know, lived the we actually just as we were about to get married, I got a promotion to be the general counsel of my company, and they were like, "You gotta get back to the States." So, we literally married and came back to the States. Um, a year and a half after that, we adopted our daughter, Alexis, and exactly a year after that, my husband, who worked at the same company I did, got an opportunity to work in Trinidad, back home. So I quit my job and went back home, with our daughter, with our one-year-old. That's really when I started, writing a lot. I was doing a lot of writing then, and, we were there for a couple of years, came back to the States. I came back and was a lawyer, got another job as a lawyer for a couple of years maybe, and then was like, "Yeah, I really wanna be a writer."
And how old were you at that point?
By then, I would have been, guess what, 35, 36, right in
The
there?
the the dawning of
The
midlife.
dawning of midlife, exactly. So since then, I mean, I'm sort of speeding up now. We have lived in the States the entire time. Our daughter is now about to enter her last year of college. We actually, a year ago, just bought a little tiny flat in England, so we're now splitting our time between England and the States, looking to a future of probably full-time in England again, looking to have a daughter launched, hopefully, in the next couple of years, and I'm writing books, and I've written lots of books. I wrote the book, Radiant Rebellion, which is how you know me.
The
Um
radiant I have your
Oh, look at
handbook
that.
right in front of me, right?
Yes,
For
it's
those on video, you can see that I literally this is the funny thing about this, Karen. I just finished so this is, like a journal, and for me, it's my to-do list and things like that. I literally just finished it this morning.
Oh,
It's now
wow.
it's now so I have the new one, which I just started this morning
Oh,
writing, and so the timing of this is perfect. But
that's
yes,
really
the
funny.
Radiant Rebellion, and you did an MEA workshop on that. You're doing an MEA workshop on that this fall. The Light Makers Manifesto.
Correct, yeah, that's about joyful activism. So that one came sort of first. I wrote a book many years ago before that, but the Lightmakers Manifesto is about joyful activism. Radiant Rebellion is about joyful aging and also resisting ageism, so it's sort of like an evolution of that. And then I have a new book, coming out this year, which is called In Defense of Dabbling: The Brilliance of Being a Total Amateur, and it's all about creating a self-transcendent life.
And we're coming back to that one because we'll spend some good time on that. But let's spend a few minutes on your midlife chrysalis, which it sounds like might have happened in very early midlife. Do you feel like the time when you had a big transition was around mid 30s because of your career, or was there another major transition that went on, in your 40s or even early 50s?
I would say that my chrysalis really started early 30s when I moved to London. Like, that to me felt, like, really, transformational. It felt I'm the elder of 2 girls, an immigrant, and a people pleaser, right? Like, I was like, "I'm gonna make my dad," and my dad grew up extremely poor. He sort of scholarshiped his way into a PhD in petroleum engineering, and so the idea that we did not ex that we like, there was no way we weren't going to college. There was no like, we had to excel. I always felt like I was doing whatever dad pretty much and mom, but pretty much dad suggested I do, strongly suggested I do. And so when I turned 31, first of all, I got divorced. My parents are still married, right? So that was already like, whoa, what is she doing? So I'd pretty recently gotten divorced in the last 3 or 4 years, and I was leaving the country on my own.
Well, plus you had also stepped away from engineering. Let's be honest about that too.
Well, no, when I went to London, I was still I stepped away from engineering, but it was okay because I went to law school, right? So even though I had stepped to engineering, it was like it was still considered an evolution because it was law school. It wasn't like I left to become a rock star or something like that, right? So I was going to law, and I was still a lawyer in the oil industry, which my dad was in. So it wasn't really that big of a shift.
You're such a fucking rebel. Look at you.
Exactly, right? So moving to London really felt like, I mean, certainly not rebellion, but it felt like it was the first time that I was really coming out from behind my my under the wing of my parents, right? So that was probably the biggest thing, and London, let me be real, like, I love London. London's one of my favorite cities in the world, but it's a hard place to move to, right? Like it's not, I always say that, Americans, you're a friend until you prove otherwise, but Brits are the opposite, right? You're not a friend until you prove you're a friend, right? So whereas Americans will be like, "Yeah, hi, welcome, we'll go have dinner," and then maybe they'll drift apart, right? In England, they're sussing you out for a while before they decide you're friend, and then they're your friend for life, right? Once you're a friend, they're your friend. But it was a really surprisingly difficult navigation because I assumed, well, I grew up in an English school system in Trinidad and I speak the language. And so this will be very easy. And of course, that was an extremely naive way to approach it. So that I think was the start of it, was that. And then, of course, meeting my husband and then becoming a mother and all that, like all of that was happening in my 30s, right?
So let's talk about we'll focus on the US for right now. What do we get wrong about both midlife and aging? The Radiant Rebellion is really about seeing the light that can come with age. And yet the way we tend to look at this as a culture is there's a dimming. It's like you're a bright light bulb at age 25, and then it just starts to dim, and it's like the dimmer just gets worse and worse until you die. And I don't think that's your point of view. In fact, what does it say? Keep making light.
Yep, behind me. Yep, keep making light.
That your neon on the back wall there. Keep making light. So, tell us about your point of view on aging and midlife.
Because I've moved back and forth between the Caribbean, between Trinidad and America, I think both countries treat aging very differently. Um, and in a lot of ways, I think I have a very Trinidadian outlook. My closest models for aging are my parents, and so I sort of have them as kind of role models. And my parents, in Trinidad, let's just say Trinidad is much, and I'm speaking in gross generalities here, right? Like obviously, there's going to be exceptions to every horrible generality and stereotype that I'm about to enter into. But there's certainly capitalism in Trinidad. Don't get me wrong, but there is a sort of there isn't this sort of competitiveness about how much you're gonna make. Let's just start with that, right? How much you can make and he who dies with the last, with most wins kind of thing. That I feel like there is more in America and to a certain extent in England, right? But to a certain extent. And so I think first of all, that's part of it. And as we get into midlife in America and we start to look at things like retirement, right? Like that there's this idea of you're slowing down, you're not contributing as much, right? Which I don't feel is as huge of an issue in the Caribbean. So we'll start with that. The second thing is beauty for women, right? I feel like the concept of beauty in Trinidad versus America is very different. And I think a lot of honestly, I blame a lot of it on carnival in Trinidad, right? Because we have a very big carnival like in
I
Brazil,
love it. No, I
right? Yeah.
know.
And
Yeah.
so there's this sort of like every year there are women of all shapes and sizes and men of all shapes and sizes in very skimpy costumes and we're all just sort of reveling in each other in the sun and the music and everything else like that. And so there's this really kind of freedom in like beauty and what beauty looks like and than there is in the US. I feel like in the US there's this sort of like they're marketing to you that you should start intervening on the aging process at it's a shocking young age. It's like at 24 years old here, which doesn't happen in the US. So I think culturally there's a lot of differences in that. And I think here because of that, and literally, as I've talked in the book, that's sort of baked into society. Like, we Americans did not hate aging at the beginning of the 20th century, right? As a matter of fact, aging was sort of revered. And until, the world wars and the Great Depression, when a lot of 30-year-olds were sort of out of jobs, then the government said, "We're gonna have to have a mandatory retirement age so these young men can take care of their parents." And all of a sudden, aging became a problem that needed to be solved, right? And it was literally sort of baked into the culture that here, aging is a problem that needs to be fixed. That's sort of the way that it's thought of here. And that's where we get it wrong, because once we've been sort of steeped in this idea that if you're not contributing to, like, the economy, you're useless. If you don't look 20, you're useless, right? When you start to get into that, then aging becomes something that's fearful, right? And I don't believe that to be the case, and I've witnessed that it's not the case. That first of all, I mean, even living here in the United States, like, all of my friends who are around, but, I would say within ten years of my age, I just turned 58. So let's say certainly between 48 and 68. These are people that are writing books, becoming bestsellers, doing Broadway plays, like creating retreats, right? Like, all of these things are happening at this age where we're finally we know ourselves better, we're more confident in what we're able to do. A lot of us have more of the money that we would have had than we were when we were in our 20s or something like that, and we have this sort of power that I think is overlooked because of this idea that, "Oh, no, 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 you're getting older, when in fact, we're actually coming into our power, I would say, as we enter into midlife, and that's a really strange that's really why I wrote the book, because I could not reconcile this idea of, well, we're supposed to be winding down life, and as you had met, when everybody around me was really sort of revving up, like, it was really some really great legacy building, wonderful things that were happening around me.
So did you just sort of describe what the Radiant Rebellion is? And if there's anything else you want to add to your point of view of what is the Radiant Rebellion?
Yeah. So, the Radiant Rebellion, it's really funny because I wrote the book at a really sort of pivotal time in my life, because my marriage was turning 20, my daughter was turning 18 and about to leave university, and I was turning 55. It felt like everybody who heard that these things were happening to me were only happy about the 20-year marriage, right? Like, everybody was like, "Oh, 55, double nickels, are you okay with that?" Or, "Oh, your daughter's leaving, empty nest." And I didn't understand it, right? Because I was like, well, first of all, like, getting older is the goal, right? And also having my kid leave and go off to college, I mean, that was always the goal as well, right? Like that. So I didn't really understand it. So embarked on the book thinking I'm going to go, like, interview people about all the different aspects about aging that I'm certainly thinking about, like spirituality and health and all the things, and take their advice and see what comes up. And what I came up with and what I think the rebellion is, it's not about, like, ditching the hair dye or I don't care what you do. Like, if you dye your hair, if you don't dye your hair, if you but what I want people to do is really interrogate why they're making the decisions they're doing this, and how much of the decisions you make in your life, whether or not it's how you dress, what you wear, how you pray, the adventures you go on, the things you try, the things you choose not to try, that you understand that you making those decisions independent of what society tells you it should be. So if you stop dyeing your hair, like, are you doing it, or if you keep dyeing your hair, are you doing it because society says you need to keep dyeing your hair, or are you doing it because of some real things? Your job, you'll get fired for your job, which I heard from people who were in media, right? That were saying that if I stop, or people who were single were saying that people will I've never done a singles thing, but what, swipe left or right, depending, and reject, and really lose out
Or
on
just hopefully not
opportunities for
swipe your
connection.
purse. Like,
Exa exactly, right? But and those are real, and I just want people to make sure that they're making these decisions with full knowledge, and that's the rebellion, right? Of full knowledge of why.
there's a phrase we use at MEA called success script. And in many ways, there's and successism. The terms consumerism is, I think, 60 or 70 years old now. And we all know what that means. Consumerism is, there's an overall definition in society. You described it earlier with the US and the UK versus Trinidad. And you feel a little oppressed by that consumerism point of view. Similarly, successism is when there is a success dynamic in a culture, often in your community, most often in your family, and your job is to actually be the actor speaking from that success script that you inherited, which is something that you and I have in common. Until we both said, "Nope, not for me." But I think one of the key things about midlife crisis and now maybe the midlife chrysalis is people waking up to the fact that at 40, 50, maybe even 60, you realize that you are an actor in someone else's play. And it's time for you to write your own screenplay.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is a big piece of what you've been writing about.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so funny. I was thinking, so my daughter's 21 and she's about to enter her last year of college. And I know you have kids as well. And there's something really interesting about being in midlife with kids who are about to enter adulthood, right? Like fully really enter adulthood. And I wonder often if that chrysalis is often prompted because we're watching young people close to us about to embark on this, and that I mean, I think we're always reflective anyway in midlife, but I think that probably intensifies it, right? Because as you're thinking about what's the advice you're going to give to this young person, and my daughter's been home for the summer, and we've had a lot of conversations around, like what's potentially on the horizon for her, and what and it's so interesting to me, like, how much of what I tell her is informed by the fact that I lived this script for a long time and have decided not to and wanted to be the parent that is like, "I wanna give you all the advice that I can give you, but I also want you to live your own life, right? And I want you to do it smartly, and I want you to do it I want you to do it with some forethought, but it doesn't have to be some sort of thing that you think I need you to be, right?" And so I was thinking, like, I wonder if this new generation, this Gen Z or even Gen Alpha, will approach midlife in a totally different way than maybe, you and I have because of the way that we grew up and successism and what that, with the '80s and and like everything, like the whole yuppie thing and everything that was happening when we were kids, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the U curve of happiness research, which has shown that generally speaking, people's level of life satisfaction declines in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and then bottoms out around 45 to 50. What's showing up right now is that young people, like your daughter's age, are much less happy than we were when we were that age. So it is possible that the U curve of happiness is just going to be an incline, constantly getting better, such
Right.
that well, aging's a good thing now because, quite frankly, in your 20s, life sucks. In 30s, it's getting a little bit better. In 40s, maybe a little bit better, but we'll see. I want to ask you a cultural question because you talked about Trinidad relative to the U.S. Do you think the experience of being Black and aging is is quite different than being maybe the dominant race in the US, being white? Ray Jetson is a friend of mine, and he's going to be teaching at MEA next year. He has a book called Aging While Black that's coming out this
Nice.
summer.
Oh, I can't
Um,
wait to read that.
yeah, no. So, what do you think? What is the experience? Because I know, frankly, one last thought. There's a guy named Jonathan Mildenhall. He was our chief marketing officer at Airbnb. He's an MEA alum. And when people started calling me modern elder, and then I said, Jonathan, I'm going to create this modern elder academy. And I mean, he's like a big time marketing person.
Right.
Modern elder Chip. That is the best. I think that's the best. And he's also a Brit. He's African English. So long story short is he said it's amazing. And then when we started launching it out there, it's like everybody's like, elder, what a terrible word. Nobody wants to be an elder. And then I went back to Jonathan and I said, Jonathan, what is it? And he says, well, culturally in the Black community, being an elder is revered, it's
Revered, sure.
appreciated, and you have multi-generations living together, and therefore there's a sense that you're connected to your elders. So to tell us a little bit more about your point of view as a Black American and Trinidadian and Brit, and all, you get a lot of hyphens and a lot of flashes there.
Yeah.
What's it like?
So I don't write about this in Radiant Rebellion, but it is something that I talked with about, particularly with a doctor that I interview who is of Indian descent. And I asked her, like, do you think that of the people who talk to you about aging in your office, I make up that the ones who are really scared of it are white? And she said, yeah, that's true. More so, more so. I don't want to say, like, I mean, for sure, like everybody worries about aging, like that. I don't want to do that, but I do think, and and this I actually did talk about in the book with a friend of mine who is Eritrean. He was born in Eritrea. He grew up in Ethiopia and I think America, so kind of both, and like in international schools. And he said as well, he goes, yeah, there's a difference. Like there's a you when you walk down the street and you see an older person in East Africa, in his case, like you acknowledge them, right? It's not this idea of invisibility that you hear so much about in the US, right? Like you acknowledge the person. That person is sort of revered for their wisdom. And that's very, very cultural. In Trinidad, I would say it's somewhat similar for sure. Um like one thing that I think that we do here, that I mean in Trinidad, that I've not seen Americans do, is any elder, particularly your parents' contemporaries, are called auntie and uncle, right? So it's always auntie so and so and uncle so and so and auntie so and so. And so there's a built-in sort of reverence there because they're given this honorific as a child,
Even
right?
even if they're not blood.
Especially your mom's best friends, your like the only people you use Mr. and Mrs. are people like your teachers or like somebody that you meet that has no relationship to your family other than a professional one, right? But everybody's auntie, and I raised my kid the same way. Like a lot of my very good friends are Auntie Laura, even though they're American. I'm like, Alex, this is Auntie Laura. The idea of my daughter calling somebody older than her by their first name is bananas to me. Like it is bananas. And it's very, and I have to say, when I hear her friends call me Karen, like, there's a little part of me that's like, "That feels wrong," right? Like, that feels wrong. I live in the South, I live in Texas, so there's a lot of Miss Karen. "Miss Karen, can you do this? Miss Karen, can you do that?" That actually feels better, but there's this sort of built-in kind of reverence for people who are older than you, and you get it as a child. And so I think that that's part of the thing, right, that happens as you get older, that I would never, ever, ever, even me at my big ass 58 years, like, my parents' friends will never be I would never call them by their first name, ever. They're either Auntie so and so or Mrs. so and so. That is it. Like, I would just never do it. And I think that that actually is sort of built in a kind of reverence that you don't really see in America. Like, you really don't hear that. And especially I think now, like, I don't think any of my daughter's friends, I've never heard them calling me Mrs. Jennings or Mrs. Walrond or Mr. Jennings. Like, it just, you don't hear it at all anymore. And I think that's, I don't think it's a pity, but I do think it affects how people view aging, right?
When we've done two exclusively Black modern elder workshops, and you weren't part of either one of them, but I happened to be a part of both, and I was the only white person in the room, and often I was not in the room. I was there for some of the content. What was so interesting, Karen, Miss Karen, although I'm older than you, so I don't know if I'd
Auntie
call you
Karen?
Miss Karen.
Yeah, you could call me
Uh,
Karen. You're
okay. We do this thing at the start of the workshop, and you've experienced it in the workshop that you and I did together, which was, if you really knew me. And people then say something from what we call the third vault. The first vault being our brain, our facts. The second vault being our stories from our heart. The third vault being the essence of who we are from our gut, from our place of wisdom. The African American facilitators, there are 5 of them actually, who helped lead the workshop, said, we're not doing if you really knew me, Chip. We're going to do if you really knew my name, my first and last name, you would know. And then each person would talk about the origins of their last name, which sometimes if your family was, from the US, not obviously not originally, it might be a land,
Absolutely. Same in the Caribbean. Absolutely.
yeah, it might be a
slave owner.
landowner or
Yeah,
a
an
slave
enslaver.
owner. And then and the first name, and often for many African Americans, they have a very unique first name. The process of having people tell their stories and then say, I am bringing into the room right now my great grandmother, who I met, for a short time of her life. And she has had this impact on me, and she continues to have it. And she's here with me right now. And so you do not hear white people talking that way
Right.
very often. But it was such a core part there. This lineage, this idea of roots, this idea that I come from these people is so much more embedded in Black culture in the United States.
By the way, the people who have called me Miss Karen generally are Black, right? Of my daughter's friend, like, interestingly enough. But absolutely, there's definitely that. I mean, for sure, my last name is an enslaver's last name, for sure. Like, we've traced it. What's interesting, my first name, Karen, which now has been dragged through the mud in recent years, but was given to me specifically because my mother, knowing that we would likely be and like, we would likely do a lot of work. Our family, like, I would probably end up being a professional in the US, decided she wanted as ordinary a name as possible because she was afraid of that any other name would be racist, right? Like, people would treat me with a different thing. So that for sure is true. So I mean, yeah, I think it's and also I just want to add that I have friends of mine who are of South Asian descent, who auntie and uncle is also very, very common, right? In their culture as well. So I think that there definitely is some sort of, sort of baked in rituals and things like that that we don't even really think of it as having anything to do with aging, but certainly has to do with revering the olders and the elders in our
Yeah.
communities that I think you don't see as much in white communities in America. I mean, I'm making that up, and somebody's probably bound to say that's not true. We did that, as well in listening to this, but that's sort of my experience.
So let's switch gears for a second before we talk about your new book. Let's dish about Brené Brown. So
You love to do that. Every time we talk to each other, you always bring her up.
well, you know what? Because I just find her so fascinating that she came out of nowhere, did a TEDx talk, not even a TED talk, a TEDx talk. And it just like blew the doors off of societal's perspective on vulnerability and on, just authenticity. And talk for a moment about your relationship with her. You both are in Houston. How did you guys work together?
Well, we were friends way before we worked together. We actually met. Interestingly, this would appeal to you because you're a retreat person. We met because a woman who had seen both of us write online, we were both bloggers at the time, Brené was a blogger, invited a bunch of bloggers she admired to a house in Oregon, on the Oregon coast, and said, "I think we should all hang out." And none of us really knew each other, and for some reason, all of us said yes, which is very weird. Brené and I were the only 2 from Houston who were invited, and so we ended up meeting ahead of time, and then we became really, really good friends. And so this was before her TED Talk. She was a professor at University of Houston, and that was primarily her work, right? She had written a couple of books. I think she probably was just about to write The Gifts of Imperfection, but she wrote another book before that called I Thought It Was Just Me. But I think those were the only 2 that were out at the time. And we just became really good friends. And I was at that TEDx talk because it was TEDx Houston that she did that. And I remember she was the first person that morning to speak. And after she spoke, she came and sat next to me, and she was nervous, and she was like, "How did it go? What did you think?" And I literally said, "I think you just changed your life." And I mean, and then of course from then on she became the Brené Brown that everybody knows. And then there have been 2 instances where I have worked with her, where I worked with her for a few years, like in mid 2000s, and then I most recently worked with her until, I don't know, 2022-ish or so. And, yeah, we've just remained really good friends. We don't see each other as often as we used to because she's now the Brené Brown. But yeah, we've been friends now for, gosh, I mean, that must have been 2012 or so. So it's been well over a decade, 15, 16 years now.
What have you learned from her? What would you say as observing a friend of yours? What wisdom have you learned from her?
I think the easy answer is to say, oh, shame, vulnerability. I don't think that's really the thing that I learned from her. She's very, very thoughtful and very meticulous and very, like she considers all the angles of everything before she does any sort of work thing, before she makes a hire, the way she runs meetings, the way that she plans what her next books are gonna be, the way that she's very, very I wanna use the word strategic, but I the strategic without any of the negativity about it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that it can be, because it's not that. I mean, it's not it's not like being calculated, but it's sort of like being really, really thoughtful about how am I gonna do this? How can I communicate this? And then the other thing that I think is she hasn't taught it to me, I wish she would teach it to me, but is she is just magical with language. You have that. You and I have talked about that. Like that this sort of turn of a phrase and being able to take concepts and make them very digestible and understand by lots of people, I think is just a real gift of hers. And it's certainly like I said, I don't think she's taught it to me, but it's certainly something that I try to be aware of in my own writing and my own speaking and try to emulate that sort of thing. I think it's natural for her. I think it's natural for you. For me, if it happens, it's because I've agonized over the turns of phrase and stuff like that. I think she's really, really, really great at that.
So let's talk In Defense of
In
Dabbling.
Defense of Dabbling.
Subtitle is The Brilliance of Being a Total Amateur. You taught me something already, and that is that the word amateur, who knew that the Latin root of amateur, and you think you're like oh, well, it's sort of like anything that starts with an AM could be like maybe love, but not amateur is not about love. Although I could say that I'm occasionally an amateur at love. But
Are we all?
tell us about the root of the word amateur and why you decided to write this book and all of the fun you had in writing it. And I'm hoping it's going to be a bestseller.
Oh, I do too. Thank you. And also, and the very last chapter is about my experience at the MEA Academy in Santa Fe, which is very, very cool. So, yeah. So I started writing this book, or I started having the idea to write this book when I was still writing Radiant Rebellion. And I'm writing Radiant Rebellion and I'm talking sort of, about aging and aging joyfully. And the process of doing that, I'm putting selfies of myself up, like hula hooping and just doing really silly things. And every time I put up a picture of me hula hooping, which let's be very clear, I am a full amateur at. Like I can't do tricks or anything. But everybody would say, "Oh, I wish I could do that. You're so brave to have done that." Right? I could never do that. And I'm like, well, first of all, you don't know if you can't do it if you try. And secondly, brave, it's a hula hoop. Like I'm not getting paid for this, right? Like what the worst thing that will happen literally is the hoop will fall down. Like nothing bad is going to happen just because I tried this. And so I was really sort of intrigued by this sort of resistance to do anything or, oh, if I tried doing that, I would look like an idiot. Like, okay. And so I really was like, why are people not doing this? So I was interested in this idea. And then so I talked to my publisher and I was like, I really want to write this book about trying things and doing things just because you love them without turning them into a side hustle, without having to master them. And she's like, "Oh, that's really interesting. Let me take it to our marketing people and see what they think, right? Because the book's got to sell." And when she came back to me, she said something I thought that was really interesting. She talked about a young woman in her marketing department, a young Black woman, and who was in her 20s, and she said, "I love the idea of this book because I feel like as a young Black woman, I am constantly trying to excel so much to be able to make my parents pleased, to represent my race, to make my ancestors pleased, that I've forgotten how to be interesting." And I thought, that is the most heartbreaking thing I've ever heard. And so I wrote the book and I came up with the 7 attributes of intentional amateurism, which is how do you do something and make sure you're just doing it for the love of doing something and not falling into perfectionism or thinking about side hustles or anything else like that. So how do you do it? And I'm gonna try something that represents each of these things. So it included like pottery and surfing, which was like about like playing with your comfort zone's edge, and tapping into wonder and awe, which was photographing the Milky Way, which I tried to do when I was with you in Santa Fe.
How'd that go?
Not great. It was cloudy. I was so mad. I'm like, it's the desert. Why is it so cloudy?
You're coming back. You're coming back so you can
I
do it
am
again.
coming back.
Go through these 7 attributes. Let's go through
Yeah.
these 7 attributes. And if you're open to it, like tell us the beginner thing you did
Sure.
with each of
For
those
each one of
7.
them. Yeah, actually, that's the only way I can usually remember them all is what I did. So
I've
curiosity is
I've got
one.
them written here in
Oh,
case
good.
you forget.
Awesome. So curiosity is one of them, and the thing that I tried for that was pottery, which is because I was just and curiosity is also not just curiosity about I'm curious about what will happen as I do this, but I'm also curious about my own reactions when things don't go well, right? Or when things do go well and what's that about, right? So curiosity was one. Mindfulness was one, and I started a swimming practice, which was very weird for me because I as a Caribbean person, I love the ocean. I do not love pools, but I did it. Self-compassion. And what was really interesting was each one of those were something else until I started writing it and I'm like, "Oh, this is really about self-compassion." So, self-compassion was actually about detachment of ego. That was what it was originally going to be. But then I realized that really what it is, it's about doing something that you can practice self-compassion with. And this one I was also interested in doing something that I used to be good at, but no hadn't done in a while, and so I knew I was not gonna be that great at it again, and it was piano. So I had played piano for a long time in my childhood, it'd been decades, and sort of going back and knowing that I was gonna be frustrated that I couldn't do what I used to have done. So that's self-compassion. See, play, I think, was one of them. Play was one. That one was I think I did filmmaking for that one. I'm a photographer, I've been a photographer for a long time, so I thought it'll be easy, it'll be fun, I can play. It's a camera, I know cameras. It was excruciatingly hard, but I love it. So that was film like making videos, right? Let's see what else was there. I
Zone
think
stretching. Zone
yeah,
stretching.
yeah, stretching your comfort zone. That one and that was really interesting because it's not about going outside of your comfort zone, it's about really sort of doing something that makes it feel a little uncomfortable. So I wasn't bungee jumping or anything like that, but surfing was what I did for that one. I'm a scuba diver, I love the ocean, so, surfing, that was hysterical. How many is that? Is that 5?
That's 5. Yeah, next one is connection.
Connections, doing something with somebody else because as you know, and somebody who studies aging, like, connection is one of the biggest things you can do is really having strong connections with someone, and so this was about doing something with somebody, and so I did sailing, with my husband. I went sailing, which was really, really fun. And then Wonder and Awe was the last one about tapping into wonder and awe, and that was, photographing the Milky Way, which I'd never done before, even though I'm a photographer, and, I'm interested in continuing. Now, I will tell you what was the things that so the learnings from the book, I will say, first of all, every one of them, you're doing more than one thing, right? Like, if I'm like, pottery stuck for me, like, I am a complete potter. That's all I do now. I go several times a week. And it's yes, it's curiosity, but it's also mindfulness and it's also self-compassion when things go wrong, right? Like there's a lot of things like that. So every one thing you usually can exercise many of them. The other thing was that really having a hobby, which sounds so light and so, especially in a culture that values like production, right? It seems so silly, but I really came to understand that it is a self-transcendent way to live. That the reason that we should be doing the things that we love, we should be amateurs, one who loves doing something, is for the same reason that people tell you you should do yoga or you should do meditation. Like for some of us, yoga and meditation doesn't feel natural, but whittling does. And it still taps you into that mindfulness and that a curiosity and all the things that we should be tapping into for our own spiritual growth. And so I've become a real evangelist, and I say now that, your job doesn't make you interesting, but your hobbies do. And that we should all be doing something that helps us. And really, particularly as we age, right? Because it keeps tapping you into all of those things as you get older.
I'm so excited about this book because I think it's a really important part of the ingredient of growing older. One of the things we talk about at MEA is the fixed and the growth mindset. And the fixed mindset being proving yourself and winning, the growth mindset being improving yourself and learning. And one of the things that's challenging for a lot of people as they get older is they only want to play games that they can win. Or they are nervous or about how it will look if they're an idiot trying to surf or trying to bake bread or whatever it is. And, yet curiosity and openness to new experiences are both positively correlated with living a longer, healthier, happier life. So how do we help introduce to people the idea that if you're only playing games that you can win, your sandbox is getting smaller and smaller. You're going to get more bored. So it's so important. And one of the sort of surprise factors for people who come to MEA is that, I'm going to try things that I'm not used to. I'm not used to being in a wisdom circle, speaking from my third vault and like without any kind of filter. I'm not used to riding a horse. I'm not used to
Hiking up to
surfing
see
and
pyroglyph. I mean, petroglyphs. Yeah.
I'm not used to walking up a full hill at 6,500 feet and looking at petroglyphs at 7 a.m. I'm not used to in what we're doing now occasionally in Santa Fe is karaoke. Like,
Oh my God.
I know. I'm not used to baking bread with another group of people. I'm not used to, there's so many I'm not used to's, and that's fine. You know what? You were never used to anything in life. When you were born, you were not used to walking. And if you were
Correct.
that self-critical baby who was so worried about what everybody else was saying about you and pointing at you when you were trying to go from crawling to
Right.
walking, you would still be crawling. So the
Absolutely.
truth is that when we're young, we are introduced to the idea that we're going to do a lot of firsts. We're going to try this thing and that thing. And there's even data that shows that when we're doing a lot of firsts, we prolong life. We have a tendency, what actually makes life speed up and feel like, wow, it's just going by is when you're bored and you're not trying new things. Trying new things like the endless summer, the idea of the endless summer, which we sort of think back to maybe being a kid, was the idea of trying things like new things over and over again. And that prolongs our perspective on time. This is so valuable. Additionally, getting into a state of flow, which is something that you probably do with pottery now because you actually have built some talent around it. Being in a state of
I
flow,
haven't, but yes.
okay, well,
I built some skill, but very little talent.
okay. So, but at least when you're in a state of flow,
Yep.
you would have a tendency to lose track of time.
Absolutely.
Do you
Yep.
think that you lose track of time when you're
100%.
okay?
100%.
So
Yeah.
losing track of time, there's some new data that shows that actually when people are in flow and losing track of time, there's some evidence that shows that their time clock slows down to almost zero. So it's like when you're in a timeless state, weirdly, you actually are not
Are in a
aging.
timeless state. Yeah.
That's right. And
Yeah.
so this book's really important. And I think the premise that in midlife, we are open, especially if we have some time and space back in our life. One of the challenges with our 30s, 40s, and if we're raising kids, if we're doing sandwich generation, taking care of parents, is there's not a lot of time. But as we get into our 50s and maybe even more so our 60s, we get to a place where we have some time affluence, which gives us space to try something new. And one of my favorite questions, which you've heard me say before, and so have our podcast listeners, is 10 years from now, what will you regret if you don't learn it or do it now? I think it's just such an important question because anticipated regret is a form of wisdom.
Well, and I talk about all those things. I talk about regret. I talk about flow. I talk all about those things in the book. I will tell you the thing that was, and I don't know if I said this. I hope I did, but the thing that has surprised me. First of all, let me be totally frank. I probably would not have tried all those things if I wasn't writing a book, right? Like chances are, like the reason, like even the surfing thing, which I loved. Like, we got there, we were in Mexico, and I was like, I'm gonna surf. And then the day came, and I was like, I could just stay at I just could stay on the beach, right? I could do this. But I was like, I'm writing this book, I've got to surf. So there's a lot of that. Like I had an impetus. I had a reason to try all these things. But what was so lovely about having the experience of trying all these things was discovering what I was capable of. Like, that was really cool. Like, who knew I could stand up on a surfboard at 57 years? Like, what? Like, that is bananas. And I did, right? Or who knew that, like, pottery, I just said I am not a talented potter, but I'm getting to be a skilled potter, right? Like I don't have a natural talent at it, but I'm getting pretty good at it. And and that's really interesting because I was an engineer lawyer. Like who would have known an engineer lawyer who's squeamish about being dirty? And here I am, like elbow deep in clay, creating something very artistic. And just being able to discover these whole new different sides of myself that I had discounted because of the stories I'd made up based on previous experience. I'm like, why not create new experience to expand that story, right? Like that's the beauty of it.
And so expand the identity, to let go of the identity of being the lawyer or the, the engineer, and to say like, well, at this very moment, I'm a potter. So um, in your workshop this fall in early November, you will be both taking this idea of aging and this finding your light and having a rebellious spirit of just plotting your own, curating your own life. But you're going to combine that with some of this idea of like, what does it mean to be an amateur?
And how do you create and curate a really wonderful life and age beautifully because of the adventures that you create for yourself in pottery or whittling or hiking or surfing or whatever it may be, for sure.
Your experience at MEA last fall or last summer, talk about that. I mean, what was it like?
Well, I mean, first of all, let's just talk about the facility, and the food is bananas, like so amazing. So that like I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. What I think was really lovely, what was really lovely about that experience, and singular, I think about that experience, not just for me, but I think for all the participants, is it requires a lot of bravery, but it's in a space where you feel completely cared for. And how rare is that, right? Where you're required to be brave and yet still know that ultimately you're pretty safe, right? Like you're going to do some scary stuff, but then you're going to eat some really great food and you're going to hang out at a fire with a bunch of people, new friends, and you're going to share and you're make new friends and you're going to stay into like that's a really we don't get that. I mean, we got that maybe in summer camp when we were kids, but we don't really get that as full adults, right? It's a time when I think you it's rare to make space for yourself to just think about yourself. And it's hard to, even if you could do that, it's hard to do that without knowing what to think, right? And so the idea that you're going to get all these prompts and you're going to get like with me, as you know, I'm big on journaling and everybody gets a journal and I encourage people to journal and I encourage people to go to all these beautiful parts of the facility and spend time with their journal and their thoughts and then we sort of unpack them. And I think, no, I mean, let's be clear. We don't unpack what you wrote, but we unpack maybe things that may have come up for you in the process of writing. Like what you write is what you write. And I think that that idea of just sort of making space where you don't have to worry about cooking meals because that's gonna be done and it's gonna be really healthy. You don't have to worry about like, "Oh, am I gonna get any workout in today?" Trust. You're gonna get movement and you're gonna get fresh air and your body is gonna be care and you're also doing this beautiful self-excavation and self-discovery. It's magical. So it was really, really great. And I say that as somebody who was not a participant, right? Like I even got that and I was doing a lot of the leading of the things as well, and I still was able to make some time for myself to be able to do that, which was wonderful.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, it's happening again in November, and we're thrilled to have you back. Last question for you is you've learned some things along the way. You've built some wisdom based upon life experience. If someone asked you to come up with a bumper sticker, a wisdom bumper sticker that's Karen Walrond's wisdom bumper sticker based upon her wisdom fingerprints of the life she's lived, what might be that wisdom bumper sticker? And is there an origin story for it? Because quite frankly, our painful life lessons are the raw material for our future wisdom. So often that wisdom came from the school of hard knocks.
I have 2. Can I have 2?
Yeah, you
I
can
I
have
w
two.
I want to. Alright, so the first one, and I think it's one that I really try to live, is that I think kindness is a power move. And I think that, and I mean that sincerely. I think people think of kindness as weakness. I think kindness is soft, but I actually think it is the secret sauce to life. So that's one thing. It is related to the other one that I will tell you about, and that came up actually in the last week. I told you I've been talking to my 21-year-old. So my 21-year-old is in at University of Colorado. She's studying communications, and but she's also a very gifted and talented guitarist. And as she's coming close to the end of her time at school, and she's doing really well at school, and she's gonna get her degree, and she's gonna graduate, like, really with great grades and everything else, she's also thinking, "Maybe I wanna be a rock star." And it's not a, it's not a pipe dream thing, like, she's good. And so, I was talking to her about it, and I said, I feel like there's 3 things that I've taught you, and or 2 things I've taught you. I have 1 more thing to teach you, and then I think I'm done. Like, I think you're gonna do this, alright? The first thing when you were a kid is I wanted you to work hard, and I told you that it wasn't about getting great grades or being the best in your class, but when people see you working hard, that means something. When people see that means something to them, right? Like, that means more than being the best in the class or the most talented. Then when you got a little older, I told you be kind was the big thing, and it was about not just being kind to your friends, but being kind to your teachers and being kind to the people all around you because people will remember. And if you work hard and you're kind, that opens everything. That opens the doors for everything, right? Right? So now I'm going to teach you the third thing. And the third thing is be strategic. And what I mean by that is, like, if you wanna go be a rock star, go be a rock star, I don't care. But you've just gotten this education about communications, around communications. Like, every experience you've had gives you a little bit of knowledge and wisdom that in the pursuit of whatever you wanna do, don't just discard it. Like, there's things that you have learned every single step of the way that will help you make it to that next step. And so what you need to do, maybe it's you get a communications job in the music industry while you figure out, like, how does the music industry work while you're gigging at night and doing all these other things, but be strategic about pursuing that other goal. So I think the second bumper sticker would be work hard, be kind, be strategic would probably be it. I think that's and then I said, after that, I have nothing more to teach you. Like that, like if you do all those 3 things, I don't think there's anything else left to teach you.
Are you a wise one?
Oh, thank you. Likewise. Back at you, my friend.
Karen, it's a joy to be on this call with you and to just know that you are part of our guest faculty and somebody who I really admire. So thank you I'm excited to see the book. The book's coming out this on
September 23rd.
23rd. Okay. And so I think this episode is going live right around then. So it's perfect
Beautiful.
timing. Go out and buy the book. Go out and sign up for Karen's workshop in early November in Santa Fe and check her out.
Thank you. So it's an honor to be with you all the time, every time.
Isn't she fun? I hope you want to like hang out with her because my gosh, she's a joy to be with. And I think some of the words that really define her, I would say my first sense of what I learned from that was joy, kindness, being smart. She calls it strategic. I'll call it smart or wise. She's got character qualities. I think that, when ideally as we get older, our character qualities are even more present. And that's so often what we call wisdom. But for Karen, she really reminds me of that Maya Angelou quote about people will not remember what you did or what you said. They'll remember how they make you feel. And Karen's that kind of person that makes you feel just joyful about life, a real delight. I think my second lesson was just talking with her about what does it mean to be Black and aging in America. She's from Trinidad, a culture that really respects and reveres its elders, respects wisdom. She wrote a book about how to keep your light as you age. And I just think that there's this deep sense that when we talk about aging in America, we tend to talk it from the frame of Caucasians in America because it's the dominant race and ethnicity. And the reality is that different cultures in America view aging differently, primarily because of the culture that they came from. Africa, of course, very much reveres its elders. So I think, let's keep in mind that when we're talking about aging, it's not monolithic. And especially if you're in a South Asian family, an Indian family, and you're living with 3 generations together, we don't just do age apartheid and throw the old people out to nursing homes or retirement communities. So aging is not a monolithic thing in the United States. And then finally, I just got to tell you, hearing her talk about the 7 new things, the beginner's things she did, for her new book, In Defense of Dabbling, just reminded me of the fact that I've been learning how to juggle lately. I've been learning how to do a podcast. I've been learning what it's like to have, sons both in teen years and about to be in teen years. The light of our life is when we try something new and feel like a child again. And she really brings that up. And it's a big part of what we try to do at MEA as well, because when you actually feel a little bit ageless while trying to do something that, you're not very good at, not only are you maybe getting better at something, but you're learning how to enjoy your sense of humor about yourself. And, of all the kinds of senses we have 5 senses. Some of them get worse over time: our vision, our hearing, maybe our taste buds. But our sense of humor actually is meant to be there until our dying day. So hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Midlife Chrysalis. This show is produced by Midlife Media. If you enjoyed this episode, help us spread the word by subscribing and leaving a review on your favorite platform.